Story 1. All the non-Australians in the comments saying they love the idea because they don't have to actually live with it, but all the Australian subscribers I'm in saying they hate it because then they'll be forced to submit identification to every social media site. Story 2. I remember watching adult content as a young lad. I clicked yes on the "Are you over 18?" button. The intentions are good because social media is just so unhealthy, especially for teens and younger. But those that want to access it are going to edit. Quite a few people replying not realizing that in order to get it to function properly, they would need the cooperation of social media platforms, which cannot inspect every profile claiming to be the proper age to be on the site, much less make assumptions regarding their age. Unless you are going to start linking social security numbers to social media accounts, you are not going anywhere. Story 3. Banning kids under 16 from social media is like putting a fence around a playground. It might keep them safe from some hurt, but they'll only find more creative ways to push through, honing skills in secrecy and rebellion instead. The real solution is teaching them how to connect meaningfully in a world increasingly driven by digital fiction. Instead of prohibition, let us empower them to navigate the complexities of both online and offline existence with awareness and integrity. It's about handing them the map, not robbing them of the journey. Story 4. It is a nice concept, but the kids far exceed our ability to thwart technology. Close the door and they'll go out the window. Put up a fence and they'll build a ladder. It may curb some usage, but I doubt it will make much of a dent. Best of luck, though. Childhood is difficult enough. I grew up without it and it was still awful. Story 5. Consider this. The exact government refused to stop showing gambling advertisements during live sports but did this for the children. Yeah, I don't believe them. It's a surveillance bill. Story 6. I think we're going to learn that this is really just a poor policy for everyone. How are they planning on doing it without making it difficult for everybody to get online instead of just teens? Using identification seems like a massive breach of privacy, but if you're not using identification, the kids can just put in a fake age. What is even the point of this? Story 7. It's not about banning kids from social media. It's about getting adults to give up their privacy on the internet. Saying it's about banning kids is just a way to get people to give up their privacy without realizing what they're doing. Story 8. I'm Australian and I think it is utterly stupid and unenforceable. My children were able to use virtual private networks to access other countries to watch cartoons that Australian media wasn't showing here 10 years ago. This is just the two major parties trying to outdo one another in think of the children appeals for the next election, and as always making bad legislation as a result of their rush to not be outdone by the other side. Sadly, it's both major parties, so there is little chance of repeal, just children finding ways around it and overseas social media companies only doing the least possible effort needed to keep government bureaucrats appeased. Story 9. As someone who made some of their closest friends online, I find it already a terrifying thought. No, social media wasn't a thing when I was 16, but I stayed in touch with real-life friends via Microsoft Network Messenger and met new friends on forums. Denying me that would have isolated me even more than I already was. From a more objective point of view, it's still a terrible idea in so many ways. 1. Giving your identification to entities that have a horrendous track record with privacy and data safety. Cutting off LGBTQ teens or kids from abusive households from support networks. It unloads all responsibility from parents. Just make everything illegal that would require me to talk to my kid in any way. Social networks are how kids communicate, especially in a world that offers fewer and fewer third spaces, where actual, real-life communication could happen. Parents have absolutely no say in it. You couldn't let your kid have a social media account, even if you wanted to. Intrusive laws that reduce your liberties and privacy always start with something to protect the kids. A legal framework to restrict access to internet services based on age could very easily be modified to generally restrict access to file-sharing sites, pornography, outlets of dissidents, unwelcome news sites, commercial platforms from unfriendly countries. This entire law is just absolutely horrifying. The only thing more horrifying is how many Australians apparently support it. And every comment cheering on this illustrates a boomerification of millennials I've been observing for a while now. Our parents' generation getting hysterical over violent movies or video games or metal music, those were just idiotic moral panics. But our carpet bombing solution to a problem affecting the youth, that's based on facts and logic. No, it's not. It's the exact same knee-jerk reaction our parents had. Story 10. It is dumb, and anyone thinking it is a good thing is a fan of censorship, has a virtue-signaling attitude, and is full of hubris. This is incredible overreach by the government. Story 11. No, it's bad. First, governments should stay out of people's personal lives. This is nothing but oppression. And the reality is the internet and social media are a fundamental part of society today and going onwards. Trying to shelter kids from it is foolish. One, it would probably be difficult to track and enforce, but it's better to teach people about social media and safer ways to navigate it. Not just bar them from it trying to pretend it's still the 1980s. It's not. Teach people how to maturely handle a situation. Don't helicopter parent it with strict bans. Because then no one learns anything and you harm development. Part of growing up is exploring, experiencing good things and bad things. This applies to the online world too. Digital literacy is also a very important skill to know in this age, as is communication and networking. And I think people are focusing too much on the for the kids part and not thinking of the implications of it. As again, this is extreme government censorship cracking down on people's lives. In no way does this represent a good thing. Here's a precedent for a national government claiming legal control over the internet to restrict access. This completely violates the freedom from politics the internet is, in theory, supposed to have. Where does it stop? Will more laws come? Will other countries follow suit? This sort of thing is dangerous, and it needs to be treated as such before it slides any further. Story 12. Stupid and rushed. Australia spent a few years building something like a firewall to prevent piracy, and it was broken in a few hours. This ban will achieve nothing but a sudden flurry of sign-ups of accounts from users who are 17. Story 13. The way of enforcing this ban is to make every single person in Australia give their ID and private information to the government. This is not about protecting children. It's about surveillance. It also puts every single Australian's private information at risk due to how insanely incompetent the Australian government is at handling tech-related things, as seen in the Optus breach. Also, banning children from the internet does not keep them safe. The vast majority of child abuse and exploitation is done in real-life communities by family, teachers, neighbors, etc., and cutting off the internet to youth cuts them off from vital, life-saving resources and information. As someone who would very likely be dead if I did not have access to the internet as a child, this is a nightmare for both the children of Australia and everyone else. Please think for 5 seconds before being like, social media bad for kid brains so government bans equal good. I'm not saying there aren't issues with the internet and how children are using it, but government surveillance and bans are not the answer. Story 14. It's bad. Sounds like they are trying to lay the groundwork for destroying privacy and anonymity online. Think of the children. Now, papers please. Story 15. I'm skeptical. I don't know about the prevalence of family bloggers there, but when the parents are the ones exploiting the kids, I don't feel that it would help much. Story 16. It will just continue to put the burdens of trying to protect and support kids onto places that will have a hard time doing so, while making no responsibility for a harm-incentivized social media economy. Story 17. As someone who was basically raised by the internet, such as YouTube and forums, in a good way, I don't think that's the way to go. If I hadn't had the open, loving, and accepting online community, as a gay male born in rural Austria, I might have turned out as a very bitter person. Story 18. Yeah, let's reduce kids' abilities to learn technology and further isolate them from other people because sometimes people get bullied and Australians should be outdoors or something. Let's force people to identify themselves to create any social account, meaning people of all ages now have to hand over sensitive documents, making it more likely to have your identity stolen or traced. This is a heinous, draconian action by the government that doesn't benefit us. This should be a choice made by parents. There are nearly unlimited ways for parents to restrict what their children can do with their devices through various parental controls. You can restrict apps from being used at all or only for a certain amount of hours during specific times. And that's just through software. They can physically restrict a child's access as well. What about children struggling? Most teens suffer a high amount of depression. How are they meant to reach out and find like-minded individuals to socialize with, especially if they have interests they might get bullied or judged for by those they know, like anime, games, science, history, fantasy, or any number of niche things that normally don't fly well at school? How are they meant to express their interests and creativity to a wide audience of like-minded people? Similar to above, many interests would destroy their social life at school. They are missing out on a huge opportunity with these restrictions to build a career for themselves from their passions too. Artists, programmers, writers, musicians, how are they meant to get their work out there without access to these platforms, at a time in their life when they have more time to be creative and productive than they ever will have a chance to be later? This time in their lives is their best opportunity to get an audience and their name and work out to the world and benefit from it. That's impossible without social media. Having your online identity tied to your real person also causes issues for adults now. You may get bullied and tracked down in real life if you have any online presence and present any opinions at any point in time which become offensive then or later. All it takes is one leak or hack from any site that knows your identity. There are countless reasons this is a bad idea. It is setting back the youth, making us less competitive with the rest of the world in regard to technology in a world ruled by technology. It's removing privacy from us. It's removing control from parents. It will probably make children more depressed and definitely make it harder for them to find comfort during those times. This doesn't benefit children or parents. Story 19. I am astonished at how many people here think it is a good idea. This bill is all about censorship and preventing those under 16 from accessing and viewing any form of media that is not from the school system or the government news, that is, sources that are prone to indoctrination. The Australian government is claiming that it is about protecting the kids, but, as the majority of Australians are aware, that is merely a guise and absolute lie. An example of this is that the bill would require social media platforms that can have potentially educational purposes to be banned for those under 16, while actually harmful sites such as Pornhub are not affected by this bill at all. Furthermore, the bill would require all Australians, including tourists coming into Australia, to have a form of digital identification to access social media platforms such as Facebook and others. In short, the government would have access to this identification so they can monitor you at every corner, which further shows how it is all about control. The vast majority of Australians do not want this bill and believe it is just a power grab, which it is. Additionally, this bill was rushed through Parliament extremely fast to the point where there could be virtually no debate about it, once again showcasing how our current government wishes for as little counterarguments to this bill as possible so that people do not realize how horrendous it is. This bill will go down as a complete failure and will be known forever as another attempt by the government to censor and monitor its citizens and control freedom of speech. Right now, Australia has terrible people in Parliament. Both our current government and the opposition are absolutely weak and do not have the Australian people's interests at heart at all. The Australian people fear for the future of this country, as the only people who genuinely care for the country are some of the independents who unfortunately do not have the power to greatly make a difference. The only people who want this bill and think this bill is a good idea are those who are ill-informed about its severity, or else those who merely wish to censor and monitor the lives of their citizens. It is a direct attack on all Australians' free speech. Whether you agree with me and the facts or not is irrelevant, because one way or another the effects of this bill will reveal everything. So when the time comes that everyday Australians, not just those under 16, are affected majorly by this bill, I hope that those who think it is a good idea finally see the truth and how utterly horrendous it really is. Story 20. I don't need the government to help me police what my kids do online. I can do that with router settings and Chrome settings per device, blocking access to hardcore pornography and social media online. I can say no and ignore a kid's whining. I can check their use of Messenger, especially with advance notice that swearing at each other in a group chat with grandma was a dumb idea last time and will lose them access to the device entirely if it happens again. I don't want to upload my ID everywhere. Or theirs. I am sure this is about reducing the usage of social media for news as well. Big News here doesn't want Facebook competing. There was nowhere near enough consultation on this dumb idea. I do not want this to impact Discord. My kids use Discord specifically and only for game time voice chat with the family. It is my job to be the enforcer of household rules, to decide that they can watch Terminator even though they're not old enough. It is my privilege to get this wrong and then be in trouble with my wife and spend a week helping my kid no longer be afraid of robots and enjoy how much they love Terminator 2 afterwards. I didn't need age verification from the government for that either.